All right, Iowa, we are tracking what is likely to be our first major winter storm of the season. This is the winter storm they're calling Blair, and looking at your screen right now is the European depiction of that model, at least from the run today here, Thursday, January 2nd. And you can see for southern Iowa, pretty much looking at light snow amounts. But I do want to draw to your attention, I know it's not Iowa, but there is going to be a big headache of some freezing rain and mix for our neighbors to the south across central Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, Kentucky, and perhaps parts of Ohio. It's not looking good for those folks. Expect a big headache with down tree limbs, slippery, treacherous travel conditions, and just, yeah, not someplace I'd want to be. Further north, in between that area, is where we're expecting the heaviest snow, basically all along here. This, again, European model. We'll look at the GFS for comparison, or the American model. Same thing, big headache down south. But here in Iowa, I want to point out a little bit heavier snow likely. You'll see the shades of blue being a little deeper, a little darker there, indicating those heavier rates as we move through your Sunday into Monday morning. Just a big picture, this is the expected snowfall totals based on the European model. Again, that heavy band stretching several hundred miles, and the heaviest, for example, around Kansas City back into Kansas, and again, southern Ohio, Indiana there. I always like to compare models. Nothing's set in stone, especially this far out. Things can shift north or south just 100 miles and completely change the look of the storm depending on where your location is, especially in Iowa. You could go from having nothing to perhaps a pretty good dumping of snow. This is the GFS, and that heavy swath is much thicker and butting right up against the Iowa-Missouri border there, so could mean some heavier amounts as we zoom into that model. You can see down there in Missouri, northern Missouri, looking at a foot or more. I was poking around some places in here, it was indicating 17 to 18 localized amounts. I don't think that will happen, but this is a model and it is a possibility. Really, for Iowa, we're looking at Highway 34 and south, totals between 6 and 10 inches based on the GFS. Lighter amounts, especially as you get up Highway 20 and further, you're pretty much looking at flurries. Des Moines, Iowa City, this storm could really be in flux in terms of if you're going to see an inch or 5 inches. Speaking of, here's another model, the European, slightly more aggressive for Des Moines, but really painting the heaviest snow still south of Highway 34, Creston, Ottumwa, Centerville, Red Oak, all those areas picking up between, we'll just say 5.5 to 9 inches. These are the two models we typically have looked at on this channel. For this storm, I want to bring in a third model, a different type of model. This is the SREF, SREF. I don't know if that's what everyone else calls it, but that's what I'm going by. And this is an ensemble, so it is essentially combining 22 different weather models and averaging them out. So this is, I guess, an average prediction of the snow totals here for the state, and you can see the heavier band is actually further north than the other two, but the total amounts are less. And again, we're looking at between 6 and, I guess you'd say 8, maybe 9 inches localized spots here with this model. But what's interesting, we looked at the prior two that were showing like 1.5 inches, 2.5 inches for Des Moines. Here, this ensemble model is showing 4.5 for Des Moines, 3.5 for Iowa City, just over 4 inches for Davenport. So again, this is 3 days out, nothing set in stone. I just want to kind of prepare you for the possibilities of what could happen looking at these models. Speaking of preparedness, the National Weather Service has put out winter weather watches for a good chunk of the Midwest here, and that's basically the National Weather Service saying this is where our highest confidence is of having impacts from this winter storm, and whether that's ice or heavy snow, that's what they're looking at, 3 days out. Just because Iowa, except for Fremont and Page counties, aren't included yet, expect at least winter weather advisories, perhaps winter storm watch and warnings as we get closer to the event. It's all going to depend on where this storm tracks, where that low inevitably ends up here. So models are only so good. They get better the closer you are, obviously, but it's still, I think, a little far out to be too exact. One thing that is for certain, though, we're going to see some colder temperatures and downright dangerous for your Sunday night into Monday. These are the wind chills, your 6 a.m. Monday morning. And except for Davenport, pretty much the entire state is going to be below zero with those wind chills. The air temperatures are going to be in the single digits. And it's something you just want to be prepared for your animals, your pets. Check in on the elderly, your neighbors, your family. Just make sure everyone's aware, even though they're not going to maybe be part of the big snowstorm if you're up here in northern Iowa. It is January and it's going to be cold. If you've lived here, you know the drill. But that's what we're looking at. We're 3 days out. We'll certainly have more videos as the storm gets closer and we have more accurate information. I'm Clarence Smith. This is the Weather Shed. If you haven't figured it out, this is the sheddiest weather on the internet. And I thank you for watching. Consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Till the next video, have a good night.